All right, welcome philosophical engineers. Look, today we're not just going to review a paper, nope. We are opening up a toolbox. We're going to learn how to use a really powerful practical method for building completely new concepts, right from scratch.
For centuries, a lot of philosophy has kind of operated like a museum. We take these big ideas, we put them in their own separate wings, the Western wing over here, the Eastern wing over there, and we keep them preserved. That's what's called the grid. But what if we could blow the doors off the museum and turn it into an architect's workshop? Well, that's exactly what deep folding is. It's about generation, not just preservation. It's about engineering these productive, sometimes messy collisions between ideas, instead of just, looking at them from a safe distance.
Okay, so here's the game plan for today. First, we'll talk about why we even need to escape that philosophical museum. Then, we'll get our hands dirty with the actual toolkit. After that, we dive into the engine room, the 4 folding modes. We'll run through a real-world demonstration so you can see it in action. And we'll wrap up with maybe the most important part, the safety protocols. You gotta know when to stop.
All right, section 1. Let's get right into it. Before we can start building anything, we really need to nail down the problem that deep folding was designed to solve in the first place.
So this old model, the grid, it basically traps ideas inside these geographical boxes. Buddhist thought belongs in Asia. Phenomenology belongs in Europe. And the problem is, this doesn't just organize things, it fossilizes them. It puts up these huge walls that stop ideas from mixing, from colliding, which is how new ideas have always been born. It makes it almost impossible for something genuinely new to pop up between these rigid categories.
So the whole point here isn't just to compare traditions. The real goal is to generate what this method calls orphan concepts. Now, what are those? They're ideas that literally could not have been born inside any one single tradition. Think about it like this. It's not just a hybrid like mixing blue and yellow to get green. It's more like a brand new thing, a seed that has the DNA of its parents, A and B, but it doesn't belong to either family. It's a genuine novelty.
Okay, time to open up the toolbox. Like any good workshop, you gotta know your tools before you start making things. So let's look at the fundamental components you'll need to actually start folding.
Okay, now this is huge. The entire method is built on what's called the ontological wager. And the wager is this. What if the basic units of philosophy aren't nouns, static beliefs that you hold, but verbs, repeatable functions or operations that you can perform? And these philosophical functions, these verbs, they're called operators.
So here's the absolute key takeaway on this. An operator isn't about what you believe, it's about what it does. It's a function, pure and simple. It takes some kind of input, it runs a transformation on it, and it produces an output. And it's this shift from thinking about ideas as static beliefs to thinking about them as functions that makes them mobile. It gets them ready for collision.
And look at how this reframes some really famous concepts. This is what's so cool. Take shunyata from Buddhism. It's not just a belief in emptiness. No, it's an operator, a function that you can run to dissolve claims of inherent existence. Or look at Ubuntu. It's not just a nice value, it's an operation that actually constitutes a person through their relationships. See? We can specify exactly what these powerful ideas do.
Okay, but hold on. Before we start smashing these powerful tools together, we have to do a quality control check. You can't just throw 2 ideas into a room and hope for the best. You've got to prepare them. And that's where the minimum viable operator test, or the MVO test, comes in. Now, pay attention here, because this is an absolutely critical safety procedure. Before you even think about colliding 2 operators, you have to walk them through these 4 checks. First, replicability. Can someone who isn't from the original tradition actually learn this and do it? Or does it need some kind of full, lifelong initiation? Second, abstraction tolerance. Can you explain what the operator does in plain English without using all the insider jargon? Third, interface potential. This is key. Can you specify its inputs and outputs? What exactly does it take in and what does it spit out? And finally, maybe the most important one, ethical extraction. If you pull this idea out of its original home, its original context, could somebody easily weaponize it? Running this whole diagnostic makes sure your operator is prepped for a clean collision, not just, a messy and pointless crash.
All right, our tools are prepped. Now we head into the engine room. This is where the magic happens. We're going to learn the 4 core operations, the 4 folding modes that you can use to actually generate new philosophy. First up, we've got the C-fold, or convergent fold. The best way to think about this one is as mapping the terrain. It's like reconnaissance, right? Before you build a new house, you survey the land.
The C-fold lets you see how all these different traditions have already tried to tackle the same structural problem. It gives you the lay of the land.
Okay, now we get to the real heart of the engine, the D-fold, the divergent fold. This is the particle accelerator. You take two operators, A and B, that seem totally incompatible, and you slam them together. And this collision produces two things. First, you get E for emergence. That's your brand new shiny orphan concept. But, and this is just as important, you also get R for remainder. That's all the stuff from the parent operators that got lost in the collision that couldn't make the jump. And you have to document that remainder because it tells you exactly what was sacrificed to create the new thing.
So once a new idea is born, it doesn't just sit still, it starts to travel. And that's where the T-fold, or transitive fold, comes in. Think of this as your epidemiology department. It tracks how concepts spread, how they mutate, and sometimes how they get corrupted. The perfect example is McMindfulness. You take this incredibly deep spiritual practice, you strip it of all its ethical roots, and you turn it into a productivity hack for corporations. The T-fold is the tool you use to spot those kinds of toxic mutations.
And finally, we have the R-fold, the reflexive fold. And this one is so important. This is the method's own immune system. It's where you take all the tools of deep folding and you apply them to deep folding itself. You're constantly checking for your own biases, your own blind spots, and doing this is what prevents the whole method from just hardening into another rigid, dogmatic system, the very thing we're trying to escape.
Okay, so theory is one thing, but I want to show you how this actually works in the real world. Let's walk through the mechanics of a successful defold step by step, so you can really see it in action.
So here's our collision course. In one corner, we have operator A, shunyata, that Buddhist function that dissolves claims of permanent inherent existence. And in the other corner, operator B, erranty and democratic authority, a function that actually builds legitimate power through collective action. So you've got one operator that deconstructs and another that constructs. On the surface, they look completely incompatible, right?
This is where we force the collision. We do it by asking a question that, honestly, neither of these traditions would ever think to ask on its own. The question is, what if authority knew itself to be empty? What would it look like for a power structure to understand that its own existence isn't permanent, isn't self-grounded, but is actually temporary and dependent on other things? And boom, this is the emergence. The result is a completely new orphan concept, self-dissolving authority. What is that? It's a model for governance that has mandatory dissolution mechanisms, sunset clauses, built right into its DNA. See, it's not really Buddhist and it's not really Arendian. It's something brand new, born from that collision.
And check this out, this isn't just some abstract philosophical game. It generates concrete, testable ideas for how we could structure our real-world institutions. I mean, think about it. Constitutional sunsets, where every single law expires after, say, 25 years unless a new generation decides to renew it. Or organizations that are designed from day one to automatically dissolve once their mission is complete. This is what we mean by architecture, not just commentary.
But listen, a tool this powerful needs some serious safety protocols. And I want to be really clear about this. Probably the most important skill you can learn in this whole workshop isn't just how to fold, but knowing when not to. Because sometimes, a collision doesn't give you a new emergence. Instead, you hit what's called a type 1 reminder, a wall. It's a point of fundamental incommensurability. It means the two operators are just working with such wildly different assumptions about reality that they can't connect at all. And a perfect and very real example of this is when someone tried to fold Aboriginal Dreamtime with blockchain.
I mean, just look at the total mismatch here. In Dreamtime, knowledge is considered alive. It's relational. Access to it requires initiation. The land itself is a subject. Now, look at blockchain. The record is immutable. Access is permissionless, and data is just an object. So, trying to preserve the living, breathing knowledge of Chukurpa by locking it onto a permanent, unchangeable public ledger, well, that wouldn't be preservation. It would be taxidermy. You'd kill the very thing you were trying to save. The operators were just too different. The fold had to be stopped.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Deep folding isn't about just recklessly hijacking ideas and smashing them together. It's about a rigorous, responsible, ethical kind of creation. And it's about having the wisdom to know that sometimes the most creative act of all is to stop, to respect the wall, and to recognize the limits of your tools. So our workshop today is wrapping up, but for you, the real work is just beginning. The question I want to leave you with is, what new architectures will you dare to design?